Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett.
And I'm Janice Baker. We all love going to the movies, but with so many other distractions, is it still the same?
And what's been happening with our teeth? Next on Our Time. Great to be here once again, Janice, with Par excellence. Our special guest on this program is Bob Parr.
Par excellence.
Hello, Meryl.
Did
Hello,
you like
Janice.
that?
I thought that was excellent.
Par excellence?
Yes.
I just thought of that.
I don't think you'll influence anybody, though.
Well, no, the point is, you program movies for half of Australia or more, don't you?
90 screens across Australia in New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, Northern Territory and South Australia.
Is that a full-time job then, Bob?
It's a full-time job for three of us.
Three of you?
Yes.
Gosh.
And this is working out how long a movie will stay on the screen?
Well, firstly, we've got to try to... There's so many movies being made these days, and all of that's because of all the ancillary markets that are available, that we've got to try to...
Please explain ancillary markets.
Well, ancillary markets is DVD, streaming, aeroplanes, hotels. So,
oh gosh, when you think about it, the planes.
No.
The planes.
yes. So we've got to try to... Obviously, all those films won't fit in all the theatres. Now, you know, when you have a multiplex with 26 screens, they can't get enough. But when you've got a single screen in Port Augusta or something like that, you've got to try to pick the ones that are going to make them some money and get them as many in as you can.
And what's really happening with the cinema industry at the moment? This is in showing films. Is it still as strong as it used to be?
It is. The Disney, for instance, have had an enormous success with the Marvel series, and so some of those big blockbusters take a lot of money. They take an enormous amount. But this year in particular, we've had great success with films like The Greatest Showman. You know, musicals were off the boil for years. No one wanted to go.
Yes.
Les Mis probably turned that around, and then Mamma Mia. But The Greatest Showman was bigger than either of those.
Good heavens.
And the great bit of that is that it's new music. It's not...
It is new music.
Yes.
But Hugh Jackman did that for a reason, didn't he?
Well, it's...
Sort of.
Well, yes, probably. The guy that directed it is Australian, and he rocked up at the 20th Century Fox studio, and he had done a lot of the dance sequences, and he'd worked a whole lot of things out. And so the people in Fox here rang Los Angeles and said, this guy, this looks pretty good, you should have a look at it. And they just said in passing, he's a friend of Hugh Jackman and he will star. And they said, there's no decision to be made, go for it. Oh. But Hugh has wanted to remake Carousel, Roger Tambourine Carousel, for years.
The old musical. When did that first come out, do you remember?
Goodness me, it's the same year as King and I, but it was...
Was Howard Keel? Was it Howard Keel?
No,
it was the other fella.
Yeah, the other one.
Howard...
No, it wasn't.
No,
I can't think of it.
We'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah. But anyway, they didn't want him to.
I was about to go into Bless My Beautiful
Julie
Heart.
Andrews was in it.
No, I don't think that's a boy's name.
No.
No.
Everyone's sitting at home saying,
yes,
we know who it is.
Yes, I can Google it on IMDb in a minute.
Was it King and I?
No.
From Carousel film.
Jackson would know. He would know.
Anyway.
They didn't want him to do Carousel because musicals are risky. And they were making a fortune out of X-Men and Wolverine and all those things with him. And so when he finished the last one of those, and he did Greatest Showman, they said, if it works, you can do Carousel. Ooh. So the last time I looked on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, where anybody that does quiz nights should look.
Right.
It's got there in preparation.
In pre-production.
So that could be 2-3 years before it comes out, but I can't wait.
Exciting.
That'd be interesting because I guess they'd update the story to make it more of a
today story. They probably would,
yes,
yeah. I know one of my friends, John Diedrich, that on Live Theatre did Oklahoma, and he did South Pacific, and he rewrote South Pacific with Oscar Hammerstein's son. It's the only time it's been redone to bring it up to date.
Good heavens.
Yeah, I guess there is an up-to-dateness needed, isn't there?
Yes, it is.
Mind you, with The Greatest Showman, though, they updated it in a completely different way. It was sort of the old story, but the music was today type music.
They made a musical. They didn't make a documentary on P.T. Barnum.
No, that's right.
He wasn't a nice person.
Change the story just a tad.
They wouldn't be able to change the music though for Carousel.
No.
They'd have to use all the original.
No, I'd kill them.
But you might give it a bit of a beat, perhaps.
Well, you might.
A bit of rhythm.
You know,
No, it's so
Hugh
beautiful.
Jackman is such a great
Performer.
Great performer. He knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah.
Gordon McRae, of course
Gordon
it
McRae.
was. Phil's just worked
Thank
it
you,
out.
Gordon McRae.
It was Gordon McRae
Yes,
before.
yes.
I can see him in the striped shirt singing
And
away.
what's the main song in it? You'll Never Walk Alone.
Yeah.
Which that football team thinks is
Yes,
theirs.
that's right.
Well, it was written for Carousel.
Of course it was. And then Shirley Thing had
Jones.
Shirley Jones.
Shirley Jones had a hit with the song, and then Jerry and the Pacemakers.
That's right, yes.
I must be old. We must be the same age, Bob.
I think we are very similar. I'm a bit older than you, but yes.
But who's counting?
But the Carousel was not a success back when it was made, but it was released the same year as King and I.
Right.
And they put all their effort in King and I because they knew they had a hit.
Well, you see, talking to a man like Bob, he knows all the history, and that's why he's so good at programming. But it must be challenging now, Bob, with Netflix and big screen TVs for cinemas to survive.
What the worrying thing for us, the cinemas will survive. There's no doubt about that. In fact, James Cameron and Steven Spielberg, those people, had a 4-page ad a couple of years ago, and the thing, they make films for cinema. They do not make films for Netflix. They do not make films for DVD. They are what we said, ancillary markets. And those big films could never be made. All those Marvel films would never be made if you didn't have a cinema.
They need to be on a big screen.
But to answer your question completely, the problem that I see is there's a lot of little films that we need, because not everybody wants to see Marvel, not everybody wants to see Star Wars.
No.
And this week, there's or every week, there's always the little films that come through that fail because they cannot compete with those big films.
Big ones.
And where do they end up? On Netflix, I suppose.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the future of Netflix to me is, I would say in 10 years' time, you might find Netflix doesn't exist.
Well, that's the prediction with a lot of
interesting.
these things, yeah, because something will replace it, or the new generation will want to go back out again. For example, if you're not doing this on your phone to have a date, do people still go to the movies?
Yes, we do.
Yes, they do.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
do. I love to go to the
Do you
movies
date?
with my husband. We do.
Oh,
We
your
have a-
husband.
With my husband.
Just wonder if you've been doing that.
No,
and don't-
no.
Another musical this year that's been enormous is Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
And there's all ages going to that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and
That's
A
very
Star
true.
is Born.
That's
A Star is
very
Born has
true.
been huge.
Yes.
But it is a lovely night out.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
you go along and you get your choc top and
Yeah.
They're
fruit
very
chocs
big.
and
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I did a Melbourne Cup lunch recently, and just watching the cup, the horses on the screen and the sound, and it really was like being there. But the difference is that you're seeing it in close-up as well as wide shots.
Yeah.
But that's very much like the other things that are being programmed now, the live concerts.
Yes, yeah. We had an enormous success this year with Cliff Richard concert. So it was filmed, and Cliff is probably getting a bit old now to start touring the world, but he'll do something, in London.
At home,
It's
yeah.
filmed, and we've got coming up the King and I from the London Palladium. There's a lot of these things that will never be seen. Now they are actually satellited into. Say it's filmed in London, the cinemas in the UK will take it direct.
But it would be in the middle of the night here.
Yeah, so we have to delay it to suit that, and because there's always Andre Rieu, he pops up every 5 minutes, Yeah, so this since we've been digital, this has made cinemas much more flexible in what we do.
I'm sure most people understand that, but the fact that it's not filmed now going through a gate anymore.
That's right.
And I've been in cinemas where it's maybe being shown, same film being shown in other cinemas. These amazing rigs with the film off the spool there, going up there through another projector there, then off over there to another one.
But it becomes expensive when you want a whole lot of prints in 35mm when we were.
So you had to work.
I can remember we had the Simpsons movie premiere at the Mitcham Cinema, and we had it in 7 theatres, but we only had 3 copies.
Oh.
So we did exactly what you said.
Yes.
You hope nothing goes wrong,
Yes.
like a power failure somewhere.
Yes.
Or a film break.
Yes, exactly. Yes, but today, now that things are off a hard drive, and most people understand a hard drive with computers, you can do whatever you like.
Has it lost picture quality?
No, it hasn't. To me, it's increased it, and I love presenting some of the nostalgia or the classics, and. Coming up next year, we've got the Dam Busters and Student Prints.
And these are refreshed copies?
Yes.
And you were in the Student Prints.
I was in the Student Prints.
We call it the Student Quints, but not in the movie.
No.
Bob, what's coming up over Christmas? What are the big hits over Christmas?
Okay, well, there's a whole lot of different sort of films. That's another thing we need in cinema. We need to be able to appeal to our age, and I'm older, obviously.
What, 45?
And I've got to know what young people want as well. Now, there's Bumblebee, which you wouldn't see me in a fit to go and see, but it's a female version, a spin-off of Transformers. There's Holmes and Watson, which is a comedy with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly.
Right.
There's from Disney. There's Ralph Breaks the Internet, which is a sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, which was enormous. So Disney know what they're doing, I can assure you. There's Aquaman, which is from the DC Comics, with Amber Heard and Nicole Kidman, and it's about they discovered Atlantis, the city of Atlantis. Now those that have been around. There's been films about Atlantis many years ago, which we loved. There's Mary Poppins Returns. Yes. Now, here we go.
Can't wait
Emily
for that
Blunt is doing the Julie Andrews role.
Yes.
Meryl Streep, Colin Firth. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and Dick Van Dyke is actually in it because he was in the original.
Yes.
He's 90-something or other.
I know, it's amazing.
And Julie Andrews was offered a role, but she said that she's very happy with the casting, and she said, I do not want to overshadow them.
Yeah, no, I get that.
No?
Bob, there's so much more we can talk about. Come back at the end of the program, because we've got something coming up that interests me a great deal.
Goodness me, what can that be?
Teeth.
Have you still got them?
You're talking about teeth. You have got a nice smile.
Oh.
You happy with your teeth?
False. What you say is false. Look, I've had a lot of dental work done because I don't know what my genetic background was. And as a kid, my teeth were pretty rotten, but I also loved sticking my teeth in gooey toffee because we didn't really have the information when we were young.
No.
Not to the extent that we do now. So our special guest in the studio now is Professor Lindsay Richards, who... Lindsay, you are a lecturer at the dental school here. You run a private practice, but I can't even mention what you run a practice in.
Okay, well, my professional part of my life is as a prosthodontist, which is one of the specialties in dentistry.
Oh, I thought that's what you did when you needed to get everything in the right
sort
place.
of prosthetics, yeah. Dentistry has 13 specialties, of which prosthodontics is one, and we specialise in replacing missing teeth, basically. So that's what I teach, what I've been researching, and also what I practice. Really
interesting, though, isn't it? That dentistry has come such a long way in the last 50 years.
Well, it is, and I've been practising now for nearly 40 years.
Did you ever get it right?
Still practicing.
Keep learning.
Terrible joke. Sorry, terrible.
If you don't learn something every day, then you haven't been paying attention.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
But when I first was involved in dentistry, we were basically treating tooth decay, and we took a lot of teeth out, we made a lot of dentures. That epidemic of tooth decay is probably gone to a considerable extent in most of the community. In some small parts of the community still exists.
Is that because of fluoridation?
Largely, yeah, I think.
And
also better education
knowledge?
and better knowledge and better diet.
But
better
even
nutrition.
now, I mean, I know my children were in primary school that they would always have a dentist appointment as little tackers.
Yeah.
So they were educated from
Yeah, the school
very
dental
early
service made a difference by getting people into the habit of going to the dentist in a non-threatening environment. Everybody went, it was no big deal. Now, with not so much tooth decay in most of the community, we're now dealing with traumatic injuries, we're dealing with tooth wear. So a lot of people keep their teeth for longer, clench and grind.
But they wind them down, grind them down. And you've got some pictures, and these were really interesting to us because as we do age, the fact that is it mostly in sleep that we grind our teeth?
Most commonly, and that's a primitive function. Some people believe that way back in the animal kingdom, if you didn't grind your teeth and sharpen them, then you, under threat, wouldn't have any weapons at all. So there is a theory that it's a primitive thing that we do.
Is that so they could bite each other?
Yeah, but also...
Excuse me, fight over food.
Just get
Excuse me, I'll just bite you
I'll
to get
just
you
sink
to
my canine into you and teach you a lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is a primitive thing. And when we're asleep at certain stages in sleep, it's a natural thing to do. Now, when we do it excessively, we finish up waking up with muscle pain, like jaw pain and headaches, and also you wear your teeth. But it's a combination of not only the clenching and grinding. Most people would probably clench and grind their teeth for their whole life and not do a lot of damage, do damage but not significant. When you add to that some acid, so commonly in older populations, people will have some heartburn, some gastric reflux.
Oh, okay.
And if you clench and grind while you've got acid in your mouth, you do a lot of damage.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at some of these photographs. First of all, of somebody who's ground their teeth right down.
So this guy is a patient of ours who is 56 years old, and he's clenched and ground his teeth a lot. But he also has a diet that he's a keen gardener. He's retired. He loves his pickled foods. He likes his homemade red wine. So his diet's very erosive. Plus, he probably is a bit overweight, probably has some gastric reflux.
And this is what it looks like from the inside.
Yeah. So what you can see in those front teeth is people have tried to restore it, but it's worn right down into the soft part of the tooth.
Yes, you can see that.
And that's going to. And in addition, he's lost a few teeth, so the load then is on.
Which
on
teeth
fewer
are they?
teeth.
His fangs?
Yeah, he's lost. He's still got his canines, but he's lost his premolars, the first double teeth.
Right.
So he tends to nibble away on the front.
And that
Clench
makes it
and grind
even
at
worse.
night. Yeah, so he's
Surely, Lindsay, having no teeth there, is that gone down to the nerve though? Wouldn't there be a lot of pain?
If you do it slowly, then it might not be painful because.
Well, is this a way of solving?
Well, one of the things we do is we can make, these are called night guards. So we make these for people to protect their teeth. If we find it early and we look around for shiny spots and wear spots in younger people, we can make these little things and then you'll chew through that.
So what's this fascinating machine?
Well, in the university, we've spent the last 20 years investigating tooth wear using these machines. So
How do you get them to put their head in there?
Takes a bit of encouragement and a long run up. But that machine we use to rub teeth together.
Right. Now, these are the teeth we saw at the beginning.
Yeah, so this guy now has been through, with the advances in dentistry, 20 years ago you would have needed to have all those teeth crowned with porcelain caps. We've built these up directly in his mouth, just with tooth-coloured filling materials that are now strong enough to...
And you've replaced the canine teeth with
and
a
we've
little
replaced a couple of teeth with a little plastic plate.
Wow.
So we've managed to restore that reasonably cheaply and in a way that can be maintained. So that's the sort of way that dentistry's progressed. And things that we couldn't do before. When I first started in dentistry, imagining we'd be able to do that in an affordable way for most of the population was unheard of. He would have had his teeth out in a denture. But
yes, well, that's not as popular. I remember my parents saying, and many people over the years, I worked with a Russian company many years ago, and when they came to Australia, they wanted to go to the dentist because they all wanted to have either lovely porcelain teeth, which meant pull them out and pop them in, or they wanted to have silver or gold teeth because in Russia back in the 80s, dentistry was painful and difficult.
Yeah. And also, we used to get requests from time to time from people in Russia to dentists and patients, people who knew someone, can you please get us materials? Because if you could find a dentist I mean, the economy was so bad that they might not have the materials.
Right.
So,
well, when they came to Australia with shows, all they want to do is get their teeth fixed.
Get some dentistry done.
By way of. But you've also done quite a bit of work with twins, which is fascinating.
One of our research interests going way back has been twins, and particularly interested because the nature-nurture debate. As clinicians, we need to know whether things are inherited or whether they're environmental. Whatever condition, if you look at crowding, say, in orthodontics, well, some things might be environmental, things you do that influence growth. Others could be just inherited. And
so we've got some pictures of some twins here too.
So we've spent a long time in a group of us, the Grant Townsend, Toby Hughes, a whole group in the university, and we've followed twins as they grow, looking at how their teeth erupt and how they move into place. Interestingly, you know, the models on the left side there are of each of the twins, and quite commonly the identical twins are so similar that you could put the upper with one and the lower with the other, you wouldn't know.
No,
really?
is that
They're very, very similar.
Right.
This is in our study, but it's another study. One of the things people do with twins is look at twins who do different things. This is actually a French study where they looked at where one twin had smoked and the other hadn't.
Right.
And you can use twins to look at
which
how
one?
disease differs.
Is it the one on the right-hand side that smoked, the paler one?
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that really tells its own story.
Yeah, and I think now this is an interesting study. This is another, again, not our study, but a very famous study in the US. So these are twins that were separated at birth and adopted to different families.
Yeah.
And so these two guys had never met each other. They came together when they're 50-something years old. This is at the airport where they met, never met each other before. They turned up from different parts of America with dressed similarly. Not only that, they like the same beer. They hold their beer the same way.
And they've both got hairy arms.
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't
count.
count.
And it's really scary, the similarities that are genetic.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing was they'd both chosen the same careers.
Same career.
They're both firemen. So that was really... And it's interesting to know, you know, the extent to which genetic things influence what we do. We know lots of things from growth and development, but as clinicians, we can't really control the genetics, but we can influence the environment. So we influence.
These girls here,
Now these girls are
pretty
I was
similar.
going to mention this because there's a range of sorts of identical twins. So these girls are mirror images. So if you look at their hair, one's parted on one side, one's the other. So they look identical, but they're actually mirror images of each other.
Gosh.
And
this is the X-ray?
Yeah, and this is, when you have mirror image twins, then one will have a tooth missing on one side and the other is on the other side. But the interesting thing, I was just thinking about this when I was preparing, you know, what I might talk about, because the conjoined twins, just like have been separated in Melbourne recently, are the end of that. So you can fertilise an egg, it starts developing, and and it splits, and you'll get two identical twins. If it develops some more, and it splits, it'll already have a left and right side. So one will be left-handed or one will be right-handed.
Right.
And if they're identical, but their hair might be different, their teeth, you know, missing teeth on different sides, they do have different abilities. So one might be stronger academically and the other's better at sport and art, that sort of thing. But then the conjoined twins, they continue to develop beyond about day 10 or 12 and start to divide, but it doesn't completely divide. And that's where you get those conjoined twins. And the little girls in Melbourne were very lucky that they divided at a stage where they had enough liver that it could be divided and their intestines weren't entangled. So when we even look at identical twins, there's a range of identicalness, if you like.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And understanding that is really helpful for parents because then you can know that if you see mirror image twins, you need to encourage them in different ways because they do have different abilities. You know.
Yeah, just hold that thought for a tick. We've got to take a break. I'm going to go and clean my teeth, I think. And we'll be back in a tick with a little bit more from Lindsay and a little bit more from Bob.
We can't finish the program because there's always so much more to talk about.
There is. We'll have to invite you both back again next year. But Bob, why should we support an industry in Australia for film?
Because we make very good films, Malcolm. We make very good films. Ladies in Black this year.
Yes.
Previously we had The Dressmaker, but coming in January 17, is a new version of Storm Boy with Geoffrey Rush, which is fabulous.
Made here in South Australia.
And Hotel Mumbai with Dev Patel starts on April 11, made at South Australian Film Corporation. Fabulous film. We need those films because they are good stories.
And we've got a good industry in Australia. Getting back to teeth,
Well, there's a similar theme. I was thinking when Bob was talking that there's a big trend in Australia now for people to go overseas for dental treatment.
because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, but also and dentists sometimes get crowns and bridges made overseas. But there's a big risk in that it's the ongoing care that's really important. And keeping the business local then is really
and
important.
we've had a
Absolutely.
few other people on our program too, like Steve Sakoulis, talking about exactly that and the need to have the app on your phone so that can be fixed wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.
So you better do it at home, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's great to see films at home. And we're really grateful you watched us, aren't we?
We are.
Thank you to our two guests. Time for us to go. Keep yourself nice until we see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.